The first explosion shook the glass ceiling above the human envoy hall. Nathan gripped the edge of the marble table, trying to understand why an official peace meeting had turned into chaos so suddenly. Alien voices shouted in their own tongue, the deep echo bouncing off the crystal walls. He could feel the tension spreading like fire among the gathered dignitaries. Guards in shimmering green armor poured into the hall, their boots hitting the floor in perfect rhythm. Their presence was commanding, but it was the woman walking at their center who drew every eye. She was unlike any being Nathan had ever seen. Her skin was a flawless, glowing green, her silver white hair woven into 2 long braids that shimmered with tiny embedded crystals. Every step she took made the light catch her crown of sharp emerald spires. The council leader stood quickly, bowing his head. "Princess Alara," he said, voice tight with respect. Nathan didn't know much about their royal family, but judging from the way the entire room froze, he understood she wasn't just another highborn figure. She was power-wrapped in beauty, the kind of person who could change the course of an empire with one decision. Her gaze swept the room slowly, stopping briefly on each delegate. Nathan expected her to ignore him entirely, just as the rest of the court had done since his arrival. But then her glowing eyes locked on his, and everything around him faded. It wasn't curiosity in her expression, it was certainty, like she had already decided something important before taking a single step toward him. Her parents sat high on a dais behind a shield of ornate crystal panels. They were taller than any humans Nathan had seen, their silver robes flowing like liquid metal. As the princess reached the center of the hall, she turned her head toward them. The silence was absolute now, every soldier and diplomat holding their breath to hear her words. "I want him," she said clearly, pointing directly at Nathan. Her voice carried the weight of command, as if it wasn't a request but a royal decree. A low murmur rippled through the assembly, alien voices overlapping. In disbelief, Nathan's own breath caught in his throat. He had faced armed soldiers before, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of attention. The king leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing on the human. "You choose the outsider?" he asked, his tone a mixture of surprise and warning. Nathan's pulse raced, and every instinct told him to speak, but his voice refused to come. Somewhere inside, he knew that whatever was happening now was going to change everything. The princess didn't flinch, didn't look away. She only gave a small, defiant smile. Nathan froze where he stood, surrounded by dozens of alien warriors, feeling the weight of every gaze in the hall pressing down on him. He didn't understand why she had chosen him, but he knew that from this moment forward, nothing about his life or the galaxy would ever be the same. The room did not move. For several seconds after her declaration, the sound of distant gunfire outside the palace only made the silence feel heavier. Nathan could see the alien guards watching him with sharp, unreadable eyes. They were not used to anyone questioning the will of their princess, and he realized he had been placed in a dangerous position without saying a word. The princess stepped closer, her crystal crown catching the light with every movement. She was calm, but her eyes never left him. He could not understand why she had chosen him in front of her entire royal court. All he knew was that every diplomat and noble in the room was now treating him as if he had done something monumental without even moving from his place. One of the alien council members leaned toward the king, speaking in their native language. The words were sharp and urgent, and Nathan could guess they were not kind. The king's expression hardened as he listened. His golden eyes turned to Nathan, scanning him as if searching for the hidden reason his daughter would make such a choice. "You will explain yourself," the king commanded. The words were in a language Nathan understood, though the tone made it sound more like a threat than a request. Nathan opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The truth was that he had no explanation. He had never met the princess before, never spoken to her, and yet she acted as if she had known him for years. The princess finally broke the tension with a single step toward her father. "I will explain," she said firmly. Her voice carried a strength that made even the king pause. She told them she had seen the humans' actions during the evacuation of the lower district earlier that day. She spoke of how he had pulled 3 alien children out of a collapsed corridor, holding the ceiling beams long enough for them to escape. Nathan listened in shock, realizing she had been there, watching. A few guards shifted uneasily at her words. Nathan could feel their eyes measuring him differently now. The council chamber was still tense, but it was clear her account had changed the tone. The king leaned back slowly, his face unreadable, and looked to his queen. She wore a soft but calculating expression, her gaze flicking between Nathan and her daughter with quiet curiosity. The queen spoke for the first time. "If he is the man you say he is, then his presence here may serve us well." Her words sounded diplomatic, but Nathan sensed an undercurrent of strategy. She was not agreeing simply to please her daughter. She was considering what use he could have in their politics and their war. The princess turned back to Nathan, closing the space between them until she stood only a few feet away. She studied his face for a moment before speaking again. "You saved lives without being asked. You fought for people who were not your own. That is why I choose you." Her voice was calm but final, as if no one could change her decision. Nathan felt the weight of her words settle on him. He knew now that this was not simply about attraction or curiosity. It was about loyalty, about a choice that carried consequences for both of them. He was standing in the center of an alien political storm, and whether he wanted to or not, he was part of it now. The king raised his hand, and the chamber guards stepped back. "Then so be it," he said in a low voice. "The human will remain under royal protection until I decide otherwise." Nathan noticed the way the alien nobles whispered among themselves at this. Some looked furious, others thoughtful. The decision had been made, but the tension was far from gone. The princess gave him the faintest smile before turning to walk toward the great doors at the end of the hall. Nathan hesitated for only a second before following her. He didn't know where she was taking him, but he was certain that every step from this point forward was leading him deeper into a world he did not yet understand. The corridor outside the royal chamber was lined with tall white pillars that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. Nathan walked beside the princess, unsure if he was expected to speak or remain silent. Her guards followed closely behind, their armored boots creating a steady rhythm that echoed through the hall. Every alien servant they passed stopped what they were doing to bow. Eyes lowering until she had walked by, they reached a large set of crystal doors that shimmered with green light. 2 guards stepped forward to open them, revealing a private garden unlike anything Nathan had seen before. The air was warm and filled with the scent of unfamiliar flowers. Strange glowing birds flitted between massive vines that hung from silver trellises. The princess walked ahead, her hair catching the sunlight in flashes of silver and white. Nathan followed her into the center of the garden, where a small fountain poured crystal clear water into a round stone basin. She stopped at the edge of it, turning to face him fully. Her expression was calmer now, but there was still an intensity in her gaze. "You do not understand why I chose you," she said. It was not a question, but a statement. He nodded slowly. I don't even know your people's customs. I'm not sure I belong here." The words sounded small against the backdrop of her confidence. She did not seem offended by his honesty. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as though she was trying to read something in his eyes. The fountain's soft sound filled the silence between them. "You belong because I say you belong," she replied firmly. "Our laws allow me to choose a protector. You have already proven yourself in the lower district, and that is enough." Nathan realized she was not asking for his acceptance. She was telling him his role had already been decided. The thought left him both unsettled and strangely honored. A movement in the shadows caught Nathan's eye. One of the guards had stepped closer, his expression hard. "Princess, the council will not support this," the guard said, his tone low but edged with warning. "They see him as a danger, not a savior." The princess did not even glance at the guard. Her focus remained entirely on Nathan. "If they fear him, that is their weakness," she said. "Fear is not a reason to reject strength." Nathan could tell she was used to defying those around her. It was not the kind of defiance born from recklessness, but from certainty. She had made her choice, and no amount of opposition would change it. That realization made Nathan feel both safer and more exposed at the same time. The guard shifted uncomfortably before stepping back into formation. Nathan noticed the other guards exchanging glances, but none dared to speak. It was becoming clear that her authority was not just ceremonial. She held real power, and the others knew better than to challenge her openly in front of an outsider. The princess stepped closer, close enough for him to see the faint glow of the crystals woven into her braids. "You will remain by my side," she said quietly. "There will be danger ahead. The war is not far from our walls." Nathan had suspected as much from the sounds of battle earlier, but hearing it from her made it real. He wondered what kind of enemy could threaten a civilization like hers. "Then you must teach me what I need to know," Nathan replied. His voice was steady now, a small sign of his acceptance of the situation. She gave the faintest smile, the kind that seemed to promise both trouble and trust. He knew he would have to earn his place every day from now on. Still, there was something about the challenge that made him want to try. Without another word, she turned and began walking toward a smaller pathway that wound deeper into the garden. Nathan followed, the sound of the fountain fading behind them. Whatever lay ahead, it was clear he had stepped into a role far greater than he had ever imagined. The narrow garden path led them to a smaller courtyard where the air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves carried secrets. Tall white stone arches surrounded the space, each one carved with alien symbols that glowed faintly in the fading sunlight. Nathan could feel the eyes of unseen watchers even though he saw no one except the guards who followed them. The princess stopped in the center, her silver and green armor glinting like fire under the light. "This is the royal training court," she said, turning toward him. "If you are to stand beside me, you must learn to fight as my people do." Her voice carried no hint of suggestion. It was a command, as solid as the walls around them. Nathan's mind flashed back to the battles he had survived on Earth. But he knew this would be different. These were not human enemies, and their weapons were unlike anything he had ever held. Two guards stepped forward carrying long curved blades that shimmered with faint green energy. They held one out to him, and though it felt balanced, he could sense a dangerous hum in the metal. The princess took the other blade and stepped back into a ready stance. Her movements were smooth, precise, and filled with a quiet confidence that made him realize how skilled she truly was. She lunged first, her strike coming faster than he expected. Nathan barely managed to block, the energy of the blade sending a vibration up his arm. She did not slow down, pressing him with a series of sharp strikes that forced him to move quickly. He felt the weight of every blow, each one designed to test his reaction rather than to harm him. Her eyes watched his footwork, his timing, and the way he adjusted to her speed. "Better than I thought," she said after a moment, stepping back. "But not good enough yet." Nathan lowered his blade, catching his breath. He knew she was right. She was giving him a chance to prove himself, but she was also warning him that this role came with real danger. If he failed, it would not only cost him his place but possibly his life. One of the older guards stepped forward with a small nod from the princess. "He should also learn the staff," the guard said in a deep voice. Nathan accepted the long weapon, feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath his hands. The princess took her own staff and spun it with effortless grace before striking forward. The sound of the impact when their weapons met rang out sharply across the courtyard. Hours passed as they trained, the courtyard echoing with the sounds of weapons clashing and boots scraping against the stone floor. Nathan's muscles burned and sweat ran down his face, but each movement began to feel a little more natural. The princess never once showed impatience. She corrected him when needed, pushed him when he slowed, and acknowledged each improvement with the smallest of approving nods. When the session ended, she lowered her weapon and gestured for him to follow her again. "Your strength will grow," she said. "But strength alone will not keep you alive. You must also learn the ways of our court. Politics can be deadlier than any blade." Her words sank deep into Nathan's mind as he realized his training had only just begun. They walked through a hidden side passage that led back toward the palace. The hallway was dim, lit only by soft green crystal lanterns mounted on the walls. Nathan felt the shift in atmosphere immediately. This was no ceremonial route. It was a path for those who moved quietly, away from the public eye. The princess spoke without turning her head. "There are those who will try to remove you before you become a threat to them." Nathan's jaw tightened as he followed her steps. He understood the meaning behind her warning. It wasn't just the war outside the city walls he needed to worry about. It was the silent battle happening inside these very halls. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was a part of it. The hidden passage opened into a tall chamber, lit by shafts of pale sunlight, streaming through narrow windows high above. The air here was cooler, carrying the faint scent of polished stone and old paper. Nathan's eyes moved over rows of carved pillars, each one etched with alien runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. The princess stepped forward without hesitation, her presence commanding the attention of the three figures waiting at the far end of the room. They were dressed differently from the guards, wearing long robes of silver and black. Each robe bore a crest that seemed to shift in color when Nathan tried to focus on it. Their faces were older, marked by lines of wisdom and calculation. One of them, a woman with deep golden eyes, spoke first. "Princess Alara, you bring an outsider into the Hall of Accord without council approval. Explain yourself." Her tone was controlled, but Nathan could hear the edge beneath it. "I owe no explanation to those who did not stand in the lower district when it burned," the princess replied sharply. "He fought for our people when your soldiers were too far to help." Nathan felt every gaze turn to him then, as if measuring his worth in the span of a single breath. He stood straighter, refusing to look away from the scrutiny. Whatever they thought of him, he would not meet them with weakness. The man to the left of the speaker stepped forward. His voice was softer but no less dangerous. "A single act of bravery does not make him one of us. If he fails to understand our ways, he could be more dangerous than any enemy outside the walls." Nathan wanted to speak, but he knew this was not the moment to defend himself. This was her battle, and she had chosen to fight it for him. The princess crossed her arms, her silver-white braids shifting slightly against her armor. "Then he will learn our ways. I will see to it myself." Her words were final, leaving no room for further argument. The three figures exchanged glances, their silent conversation stretching for several tense seconds, before the golden-eyed woman nodded once. "Very well. But if he fails, the blame will fall on you." Nathan saw the flicker of challenge in the princess's eyes as she accepted the condition. She led him out of the chamber and into another series of narrow corridors. The walls here were lined with shields, weapons, and banners, reminders of battles fought long before his arrival. "Those three are part of the inner council," she explained. "They will watch you closely. Every move you make will be judged, not just by them, but by those who follow their lead." Nathan understood the message. One mistake could undo everything. As they walked, the sound of armored boots grew louder from the other end of the hall. A squad of guards approached, their leader holding a sealed crystal tablet. He bowed to the princess before handing it to her. She broke the seal and scanned the glowing text that appeared in the air above it. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she passed it to Nathan. The message was written in the trade language, and it was clear enough. An enemy force had been sighted near the outer defense ring. Nathan's first thought was that they should warn the council immediately, but the princess shook her head. "We cannot alert them yet. If the council believes they are in danger, they will act without thinking, and their panic could cost us more than the enemy." Her voice was calm, but Nathan could hear the calculation behind her words. She was planning something beyond a simple defensive move. "We'll go to the defense ring ourselves," she continued. "You will see what we are up against, and I will see how you handle yourself in real danger." The decision left no room for refusal, and Nathan felt his pulse quicken. This was not training in a safe courtyard. This was stepping into the war she had warned him about. And now it was coming sooner than he had expected. They moved quickly, the guards falling in behind them as they made their way toward the outer gates. Nathan could feel the change in the air as they approached, the sounds of the city growing quieter while the distant hum of the defensive shields became louder. Somewhere beyond those walls, an enemy was preparing to strike, and Nathan was about to see the reality of the princess's world in full. The massive outer gates stood like two walls of solid silver, covered in intricate carvings of battles long past. Nathan walked beside the princess, his eyes scanning the line of guards stationed along the top of the structure. The hum of the energy shields vibrated faintly under his boots, a constant reminder that beyond this barrier, there was a threat waiting. The air was colder here, touched by the winds from the barren lands outside. They reached the command post, a raised platform overlooking the gates. From here, Nathan could see the stretch of land beyond the city, a wide plain of dust and jagged rock that led to the distant mountains. In the far distance, faint black shapes moved slowly but deliberately toward the city. The princess leaned on the rail, her eyes narrowing. "Scouts say they are less than an hour away," she said, her voice calm but focused. Nathan studied the approaching shapes. They were not like the alien citizens inside the city. These figures moved in tight formations, their armor dark and uneven, their weapons glowing faintly in the fading light. He had seen organized armies before, but there was something different about the way these forces advanced. It was precise, unshaken, and without hesitation. They were not here to test the defenses. They were here to break them, one of the gate. Officers approached the princess and bowed. "Shall we prepare the main cannons, Highness?" he asked. She looked at Nathan briefly before shaking her head. "Not yet. Let them come closer. I want to see their command structure before we engage." Nathan understood she was trying to learn as much as possible before committing to action, but it made the weight feel heavier. The minutes passed slowly. The enemy shapes grew larger, revealing sharp, insect-like armor and faces hidden behind segmented masks. Nathan could hear faint clicking noises carried on the wind, an alien rhythm that made his skin tighten. The princess's guards shifted uneasily, their hands tightening around their weapons. Nathan kept his eyes on the enemy line, forcing himself to focus. When the enemy reached the marked perimeter, the princess raised her hand. A loud, echoing tone rang out across the walls as the gate's defense systems powered up. Massive green energy fields flickered to life, creating a shimmering wall between the city and the invaders. The enemy halted for a brief moment, their front ranks studding the barrier. Nathan knew this pause was not hesitation, it was calculation. "Open the forward watch doors," the princess ordered. The gates parted just enough for a small squad to pass through. Nathan found himself moving with them, stepping into the barren open ground. The air outside felt heavier, the sky dimmer as if the enemy's presence had drawn the light away. The princess walked at the front, her armor glowing faintly under the darkening sky. The enemy leaders stepped forward from their ranks. Their armor was marked with jagged red lines, and their helmet was shaped like a pointed crown. "This city will fall," the leader said in the trade language, their voice a metallic growl. "Stand aside and live, or fight and be buried here." The princess's reply was immediate, her tone sharp as steel. "If you want this city, you will bleed." For every stone of it, Nathan watched as the two leaders locked eyes. He could feel the tension building like a drawn bowstring. Every muscle in his body was ready to move, but he waited for her signal. She did not look back at him, but he sensed she trusted he would act the moment she needed him. That unspoken connection filled him with a strange confidence. The enemy leader gave a sharp gesture, and their soldiers began to advance. The princess's hand shot up, and her guards moved into position. Nathan stepped forward, his weapon ready, the weight of the blade familiar now after hours of training. He could feel the ground trembling under the march of enemy boots, the air vibrating with the clash that was about to erupt. The first clash came like a thunder strike. Enemy soldiers surged forward with terrifying speed, their insect-like armor clattering as they struck against the shields of the princess's guards. Nathan stepped into the fray without hesitation, his training in the royal courtyard guiding his movements. The hum of his blade filled his ears as he met the first attacker head-on, blocking their strike before countering with a sharp blow that sent them staggering back. The princess fought at the front, her curved blade glowing with green energy as it sliced clean through enemy armor. Her movements were precise and deliberate, every step calculated to both defend her line and press the enemy back. Nathan stayed close, watching her footwork, adjusting his own position to keep her flank clear. Each time she struck, the enemy recoiled, and Nathan felt the momentum start to shift. The enemy responded with a coordinated push, their front ranks dropping low while the second line aimed strange, spiked projectiles toward the defenders. Nathan dove behind a low barricade as the spikes embedded into the ground with explosive force. Dust and debris shot into the air, stinging his skin. He rose again quickly, meeting another attacker who had broken through the side. His blade clashed with theirs, sparks flying in the dim light. A guard shouted a warning as an enemy soldier tried to flank the princess. Nathan saw it and reacted instantly, stepping into the path of the attacker and forcing them back with a strong strike. The princess gave him a brief, sharp nod before turning her attention to the leader of the enemy forces, who had moved closer to the front lines. Nathan realized this fight was building toward a single, decisive confrontation. The enemy leader moved with deadly speed, their red-marked armor making them stand out against the chaos. They swung a massive, jagged blade with both hands, striking at the princess with enough force to make the ground tremble. She blocked, the impact ringing out like metal on stone. Nathan fought to hold the line against the other soldiers, trusting her to face the leader without interference. Around them, the guards held their formation, shields locked together as they repelled wave after wave of enemy fighters. The sound of steel meeting steel mixed with the harsh cries of both sides. Nathan's muscles ached, his arms heavy, but adrenaline kept him moving. He knew that if their line broke, the enemy would pour into the city, and the battle would be lost. The princess and the enemy leader traded powerful blows, each strike testing the other's strength and speed. Nathan could see the strain in her movements, but also the unshakable resolve in her eyes. Then, in a sudden burst of motion, she twisted aside from a heavy swing and drove her blade upward into a joint in the leader's armor. A sharp, metallic cry rang out as they stumbled back. The sight of their leader wounded caused a ripple of hesitation through the enemy ranks. Nathan seized the moment, shouting to the guards to push forward. They surged together, driving the enemy back step by step. The princess advanced as well, her presence like a beacon that pulled her warriors forward. Nathan felt the shift in the battle as the enemy began to lose their coordination. Several enemy soldiers broke away, retreating toward the distant plain. Others fought more desperately, but without their leader's steady command, their movements grew reckless. Nathan moved through them with focused determination, blocking and striking until the last attacker near him fell. The battlefield grew quieter, the sounds of combat fading under the heavy breathing of the surviving guards. The enemy leader, wounded but still alive, was dragged away by their remaining soldiers. Nathan watched them retreat across the barren land, knowing they would not be gone for long. The princess stood tall at the front, her blade still in hand, her eyes locked on the horizon. "This was only the first," she said, her voice steady despite the battle they had just endured. The battlefield lay quiet now, the dust settling slowly over the ground where moments ago there had been chaos. Nathan stood among the guards, his breathing heavy but steady. The princess moved through the lines, speaking briefly to each of her warriors, her voice low but filled with strength. Her armor was marked with scratches, but she carried herself as though nothing could touch her. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the plain. They returned through the great gates, which closed behind them with a deep metallic rumble. Inside the city walls, the people waited in silence until the sight of the princess brought a wave of relieved cheers. Nathan followed her through the crowded streets, feeling the eyes of hundreds on him. He knew many of them had heard of the princess's choice, and now they had seen him fight beside her. Their approval or judgment would come later, but for now they only saw him as part of her victory. In the royal courtyard, healers tended to the wounded. Nathan removed his armor, wincing as he discovered several deep bruises. One healer moved to treat him, but he waved them toward a guard with a more serious injury. The princess noticed and gave him a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement that she saw his choice. It was a small moment, but it carried weight between them. When the council assembled later that evening, Nathan was summoned to stand beside her. The golden-eyed woman from before addressed the room, speaking of the battle and the narrow victory. "The enemy was driven back, but they will return stronger," she said. The council members murmured their agreement, some casting sharp glances toward Nathan, as if to remind him that his place here was still under watch. The princess rose from her seat, her voice clear over the room. "We held the gates today because we fought as one." This human stood where many would have fallen. He fought not for his own safety, but for ours. Her words silenced the murmurs. Nathan felt every eye on him, the weight of their attention pressing like a physical force. He did not look away. One of the council members leaned forward. "Then let it be known, does the princess claim him as her protector formally?" The question was deliberate, designed to force a public commitment. The princess's gaze never wavered. "I do," she said without hesitation. The room shifted with whispers, but no one dared to challenge her directly. The decision was final, sealed in front of the most powerful voices in the city. After the council dismissed, Nathan followed the princess into a quieter chamber lit by soft green lanterns. The tension from the meeting lingered, but she seemed more at ease here. "You understand what this means now," she said. "Your actions are tied to mine. Your enemies will be my enemies, and mine will be yours." Nathan nodded slowly, knowing that from this point on, his path was bound to hers completely. She stepped closer, her expression softer now. "I chose you because you act without waiting for someone to tell you what is right. That is rare here. It is why I trust you." Nathan did not reply immediately. He understood that trust from her was not given lightly, and it carried with it a responsibility that could not be broken. It was not only a bond of duty, but of shared purpose. The sound of distant drums echoed faintly through the walls, a reminder that the war was far from over. Nathan glanced toward the window, seeing the flicker of torches along the walls. The princess stood beside him, following his gaze. "There will be more battles, Nathan, but you will not face them alone." He met her eyes, feeling the truth in her words. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, the city celebrated the victory. Lanterns hung from every street, and music carried into the air. Nathan stood on a balcony beside the princess, looking down at the glowing city below. For the first time since he had arrived in this strange world, he felt he belonged. And he knew with certainty that the moment she had pointed at him and said, "I want him," had changed both of their lives forever.